Ki Jai. We are in the book 3. That's the part 3 within Stay with God. And we are in page 76 on the uh, physical book, for those of you on the physical book. So let's continue reading from that point on. I think, Nomita, you have to mute. And sings to him is where we stopped at this para, which ended as wondrously new. So I continue from there. Avtar Meher Baba Ki Jai. And sings to him with sweet voice the deathless story of self's journeying, of the beyond state in which he slept in vast tranquility, like to a shoreless, waveless ocean, knowledgeless, and his awaking with desireful curiosity to know himself, which brought about he leaving himself and wandering in ignorant identification as stone, as metal, as vegetation, as worm, fish, bird, animal, and man through countless ages, and then as man, birth after birth, millions of times in which he experienced being man and woman, rich and poor, foolish and wise, healthy and sick, and all the possible opposites engendered by separation, right? So, again, for those of you coming after a break, just some context. So we are in the section called God Speaking, and we are in the part that he does multiple attempts at the theme. So this is the second pass about the divine theme that he's doing. We finished one divine theme. So he's talking about the journey of the soul from the beyond state through all the steps. So stop me when we have something to discuss. I will stop anyway when something is very tough, right? Okay, so I continue to the next stanza. How he took his stand and fought the wars of returning and returned, now with all knowledge, all power, and still bliss, and came down again as savior to man, selves of himself. That's a beautiful line. And came down again as savior to man selves of himself. So he's describing all of us as man selves of himself, which is Baba. His various avatars, each one unique and lovely, perfectly himself, of Zarathustra, bringer of the sacred fire of love and pure intelligence. Rama, the archer whose arrows were shining light. Abraham, the pure who taught man to worship one God. Krishna, the player of divine music in human hearts. Buddha, the tender who showed men the passingness of life. Jesus, the only real ascetic, and Muhammad, who lived with men. So this is again a reference to the avatars, but there's an interesting inclusion which is happening for the first time. Abraham is in the pecking order. So we have Zarathustra, Rama, Abraham, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad, right? So Abraham is a perfect master, right? Is that what Baba acknowledges him to be? Anybody? Or he's in the Mandali, more like? I don't know. Nobody knows. Good.
No
So
clue.
I yeah, nobody knows. That's fine. So I think that's new. We'll just mark it out so that I at least have it identified for some research down the line. Continuing, sings to him. By the way, there was a footnote that we have to read. So for the beyond, there was precious word. So that actually happened earlier in the passage. So let's just read that what he means by the precious word. Precious word is a particular name of God. In this word is contained the treasure, which is the master's gift to the disciple, and which becomes revealed as the disciples' love for it grows. It must be remembered that, with rare exceptions, the disciple in the beginning is a mass of loves. He wants truth, but he wants innumerable other wants as well. Devotion to this precious word and to the one who gives it to him gradually centers his heart on one love, which is the ground from which all his loves sprang. This devotion is the only true religion, and the unconscious appreciation of it is in all men and is behind all singleness of purpose in any field of action. Differences in singleness of devotion, being only in object, was behind the master Jami's requirement of an aspirant that he must have wholeheartedly loved before coming to him for guidance. Okay, I think it's just about the word, about the precious word and the name of God and love, right? So let's go back. I continue from the last stanza on this page. Sings to him the song of wayfaring, the adult occupation, melting his heart with its sweetness and inspiring his soul with its possibility. Then gives to him the precious word. So that's the precious word that we just encountered. Then gives to him the precious word to be his sword to cut through the hosts of himself, the hosts of vast exile, nourished by the moon and bright foamed sea, and stars of ice, and horizons of brow, and wells of sweet lips, and sun clear or in murky sky, and hammered streets, a sword to slay the great beasts of far past, to cut himself free from entrancement on the dazzling plains, and go on back to the master, he to cut the last veil behind him and himself. So this is equated, the word, the precious word is equated to a tool, a weapon, a sword to help you make this journey every step of the way and to slay the great beast, right? And so that's what it is. So, any comments? That's the end of this. What's that called? This part.
Can
This
we
set of stanzas. Yeah.
can we juxtapose this sacred word to the mantra given as a diksha?
Yeah. I was also thinking of that when so precious word is could be equated to what in Vedantic or not in the Hindu traditions there is mantra diksha. Mantra diksha
Mantra
is
diksha.
there's a particular word that's given to each disciple, often unique to the disciple, that is often secret, and is the way to derive power, connect back to your master, and use it as a tool to remember God, remember the master, and progress in the spiritual path. Good analogy. Yeah. But again, here I think it's just the name of Baba and the name of God is more where Francis is, from what I understand.
Yes.
Okay. So we go to the next section. So these lines indicate end of a section. So you're doing the next section now. Once God slept. So this is another pass at the divine theme. So we finished that pass. We're doing another pass. So it's deeply inspired by Baba's passes in God Speaks. Even in God Speaks, there are three passes of the divine theme, right? Ending in part 8, which is written as the 10 states of God. So we are now going through another pass. Once God slept and awoke, half waking into dreaming, and spread out. The creation as a great tree, its roots in the nothing of his dream, its branches and leaves and fruits in the nothingness of appearance. It is called the tree of knowledge, because by it God came to self knowledge. For before he ate of its fruits, he, even God, knew not himself. So I'll read this again so that we get this. What he's trying to compare now is use an analogy of tree and also bring in the idea of nothing, right? So let's watch carefully as to what he's trying to do. He's starting with, of course, the beyond state. Once God slept and awoke, half waking into dreaming, and spread out the creation as a great tree, its roots in the nothing of his dream, its branches and leaves and fruits in the nothingness of appearance. It is called the tree of knowledge, because by it God came to self knowledge. For before he ate of its fruits, he, even God, knew not himself. So there's a different thing, very different 2 points that are being described here. So one is obviously the concept of tree of knowledge, but then it's also the tree of nothingness. The whole of creation and the varied experiences are the tree that Francis is talking about, and he says only through those experiences he gets to know himself. So there are two ideas at play here, and in that sense, the tree is a tree of knowledge because that's helping you discover yourself and realize yourself. So that's an interesting thought, or that's the way I interpret this. Any other interpretations?
This stanza, if you just focus the same stanza,
Mm-hmm.
can you move it? Okay.
Yeah.
So here, in the nothing of his dream is the roots and branches and leaves and fruits in the nothingness of appearance. So the falsity of the duality of the world. So that is what he is driving it. And there are two other aspects. One is this imagery of the tree is also used in Vedanta, where they describe the same way that the roots are high above and the tree is flowering low below, like that. And there is one more, last but one line, for before he ate his fruits. Does it refer to Adam
Biblical.
and Eve? Yes.
Biblical, yeah.
Yes. So these imageries he is building, bringing them in all his poetry.
True. I think that's a good 2, 3 ways of understanding this. One is so what is that tree in the Vedantic thing called?
No, they
I mean,
have an imagery where they say this tree has roots in the top, so high above us where we cannot reach. And then all the say trunk and all the other parts of the tree are hanging down, sort of. So the same imagery here, nothing of his dream. The roots are in the nothing of his dream, not the actuality, or say, the branches and leaves and fruits in the nothingness of appearance, as what we think is the reality, the dual world. So what all we see is just an appearance, and the real thing is in the dream of the God. So
correct.
I just don't understand the dream as such, but
So the
this
dream,
gives scope for a lot
yeah,
of thinking on these lines.
sure. I think the dream is the divine dream, the
Divine dream.
creation, which is nothing but the dream of God, and in that dream are all these things appearing, and in that appearance is the knowledge of uncovering the secret of who you are as well.
So that's
Yes.
the way I understood this. Right. So the dream is nothing but the divine dream. And
Yes.
he's equating the dream and its various manifestations to a tree, but all those trees are in nothing and hence full of nothingness. But in the tree itself lies the secret or lies the knowledge that helps you discover who you are. That's the way I got it.
See, the Jay
So,
Baba, what
yeah.
Karthik said about the divine dream happens with the whim, who am I, as we know.
Yes. Yes.
So, in this divine dream of the who am I, the paradox is that within the dream there are certain rules of the game, what we call as the laws of nature. For example, we know that in the material world, in the 16 hours of our waking state, we have to follow certain rules of nature. I mean, starting from the four fundamental forces, we know the electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, and the gravitational force, which is what is keeping this whole material world going in a macro level and a micro level basis. So we are part of nature. We have to participate in this dream, but within the dream, there are certain laws of nature which we need to follow. So, and I think Baba has said paradoxes are something that can only be understood after self realization or after you reach the seventh plane. So, it is very challenging sometimes when we go look at the big picture of the whole whim aspect, the cosmic Big Bang, and then within that we have to go through these kind of experiences, which some people feel that if you are attached to the body. If you identify with your material body, which is the gross body, subtle body, mental body, analogy of being an athlete or an artist or a scientist. But when we all go back to sleep, which we know in the sound sleep state, the divine absolute vacuum state, we are unconsciously experiencing nirvana, the bliss, ananda state. So the whole dream, the idea is we need to wake up from this waking dream and that is what Baba means awaken. Awakening is basically to wake up from this waking dream, to understand that we are not the body, but we are spirit, but we have to go through this process to become self-actualized. Jai Baba.
Wake up from the waking dream. Nice, catchy words. Thank you.
Yeah. So another way of understanding what Kama said in that dream within a dream, we are actually in a dream within a dream. So we have God's dream, and then till you discover the true nature of yourself, you're in another dream. So you're a dream within a dream. So wake up, guys. Okay, so let's continue. The tree of knowledge, through experience of good and evil, its sweet and bitter fruits. And because God ate of these fruits and became God, they are not forbidden, men. The tree of knowledge, which is the tree of life, kept living by the rivers of necessity and compassion and wisdom and infinite love. The soul, growth and compassion and wisdom and infinite love. The soul, growth, blossoming universes and man. The tree on which God crucified himself in limitation, on which men crucify themselves, each other, and dear God. I repeated a line by mistake. I mean, I went back to a old line, so apologies on that. But yeah, so it's furthering the analogy of the tree. He says there are good and evil, so there are sweet and bitter fruits, and only through the eating of these fruits you become God. So he goes back to the biblical analogy and says they are not forbidden, men, and that's a message to us. The tree of knowledge, which is the tree of life, kept living by the rivers of necessity and compassion and wisdom and infinite love. So these are the things that are nourishing this dream, this tree that is compassion, wisdom, and infinite love, the soul, growth, blossoming universes, and man. So that leads to the manifestation of the universes and man, the tree on which God crucified himself in limitation, on which men crucify themselves, each other, and dear God. So again, that's a beautiful, to use Mama's word, juxtaposing of the crucifixion of God, because that was on wood, which is a tree, and he's bringing that idea over to this, and then immediately comes to drop souls and says, of course, men crucify themselves and each other and their God. So
Yes.
all the stuff that we do in violence, in this dream, unaware of our true nature, is what he's bringing out here. Right? Any other
Can we
thoughts
have
on this
any
stanza?
idea on the word SOLE, soul growth? What is,
Why he used soul growth?
yes,
Yeah,
what is
good
the actual
question.
meaning of SOLE word, soul?
Soul is only or unique or something like that. Let me pull down.
Any other growth is not a growth actually. The growth of the soul is only the soul growth actually. That's what probably it has
Yes,
to
yes.
say.
Soul is soul.
Growth of the soul is the soul.
Soul is the self growth.
Yes.
Remember again the seven realities, the different aspects of God. God comes in the form of existence, self, love, infinity, truth, being, and so on and so forth. So I think whenever the word soul comes, definitely it's about the self, which doesn't change. We know it's only the consciousness of the soul, it's going through experiences. And here, probably it's about the individual dropped souls. So, which is basically our individual self, which will become individualized when we reach the seventh plane without impressions. Okay, Baba.
Okay, but what's
Self-growth.
the meaning
That's
of the
all right.
word soul? It's not SOUL, right?
Oh, soul. SOLE.
Yeah.
Why that
Soul
word
means
SOLE, and what is
Yeah,
the actual meaning of this
So
word
soul,
the
SOLE?
soul growth is basically it's like I
only
think
growth.
playing with words in a way, SOLE and soul growth, because the only growth, soul means only one, the only thing.
Only one. Yeah,
So
that's what the
yeah,
definition is
the
on
soul means the
dictionary.
only one growth that you have to focus on is self growth, self actualization,
Yes,
self realization, and so on. So that is how I
yes,
interpret it.
yes. And the necessity for this growth is compassion, wisdom, and infinite love. That is what he prescribes.
Yeah, so
Well, we
necessity,
can
yeah,
go even beyond that. The prescription can
Yes,
be
yes,
all
sir.
the seven, all the messages of Baba, which we know from Seven
Yes,
Realities, My Wish, Hafiz, and so on and so forth.
yeah.
true. Okay, tree, which he spread out from his single breath of inquiring. Tree, sap of light, fruits of stone fruits and metal fruits and tree fruits, and worm fruits and fish fruits and bird fruits and beast fruits, and man fruits, fruits which nourished great God on his journey for knowledge, and which through eating he became and overcame and became the energy which grew the tree and became the mind which gives its existence and became God which he always was.
Was.
Beautiful stanza, right? So the word, the MOW, most original whim, is described as his single breath of inquiring. So the question that came out created the spreading out of the tree which he spread out from his single breath of inquiring, the initiation of the divine dream. Tree, sap of light, fruits of stone fruits, and then he goes on through all the kingdoms and calls them different fruits of this tree and ends with the man fruit. And all of these fruits have nourished great God. And then He brings the GSM very, very smartly. So he brings energy and mind and then goes to God state. So he explains the soul's journey. From gross, you come to the energy plane, then come to the mental plane, and then you actually become God. So he brings that idea without mentioning the GSM. I mean, without mentioning gross, subtle, mental, right? So he brings energy and mind and then says, become God. Any thoughts, any reactions?
No, nice
Nice stand.
stanza which gives the whole gamut of the evolution, reincarnation, and involution.
True. Tree, wishing tree, which bears the fruit of every desire, fruit which contains within it thirst and fresh desire, tree into which slouch-hatted, one-eyed Odin thrust the sword of heroes and battle, earth battle, plains battle, tree of fragrances of nights and moon, and washed beach for bed and eyes wells and brows dreams, and wave lap against side of boat moored, for journeying and of sun coming up in chattering street, or jewel setting in glory on distant mountain peak, right? So he brings Odin. So before we go too far in trying to understand this, which we'll come back to, let's see the note on Odin. So 78.4, this is where I'm reading. Odin is again a Greek reference. See note 35.15 for his thrusting the sword into a tree from which a youth Sigmund pulled it. After all, the champions had failed. See Volsunga Saga. So again, some Greek reference, but we'll quickly read 35.15 as well, just to see what he's talking about. 35:15. There it is. Odin, in Norse mythology, the king of the gods, when the price of one of his eyes was demanded for knowledge, he paid it immediately. So that's why I think after that he's the one-eyed guy, Odin. So, but here the episode is something where he is thrusting a sword into the tree, and that's more fully explained in Volsunga Saga, for those of you interested, right? So with that, let's get back here. Now, what he's bringing out is, again, it brings one more analogy or one more aspect in the same tree analogy. We saw how the journey through the plains or the worlds is explained in the prior stanza. In this, his attempt, I think, is to bring in the sanskaric element. So he says it's all desires, and he says thirst and fresh desire, the fruit of every desire, fruit which contains within it, tree into which slouch-hatted, one-eyed Odin thrust the sword of heroes in battle, earth battle, plains battle, and then he goes back to his favorite beach and sun and the kiss. Remember the way the part starts, right? So he goes back to that, and then he visualizes a wave lap against the side of boat moored, and for journeying, and of sun coming up in chattering street. Again, these two lines. I do not. I mean, actually, these three lines. A good visualization, but how it fits into what we are reading from the tree and the journey of the soul, I'm not really sure. So I'm actually marking it out. Right? Anybody has an interpretation? Please jump in.
No,
Wave
I
black
don't.
from the moored boat and this concept of jewel in the peak, jewel sitting in glory on the distant mountain peak. and then sun coming up in a chattering street. So these three ideas are visually very appealing and interesting, but how does that connect to what we are reading in the prior paragraph with the tree and our understanding of the journey of the soul? I do not know.
No, I couldn't make out anything.
Okay, we'll keep going. Dream tree of dreamed creation, whose waving branches are the dance of God, which makes us crazy and sets us house building and demolishing and again building. Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manasamaya Kosha, with Vijnanamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha. Nirmanakaya, Sambhodakaya, Dharmakaya. Light, light, the light from the Master's lips is the scriptures. From his hands, the path setting. From his eyes, the tearing of veils, the ruin of the last built house.
Yes.
So, beautiful paragraph. He just takes us now to the different Hindu analogies for the journey of the soul. So it's the koshas, and I'll let Mama talk more about it. On the koshas, the different sheets, the word is sheets or bodies that are broadly equated to the three bodies, right? The gross, subtle, and mental. So let's not get confused with these, but they are similar interpretations of the coverings of the soul. And the journey of the soul is to uncover and realize, recognize, and uncover those. Annamaya Kosha. Kosha is sheath or covering. And then the last three lines are very beautiful. Light, light, the light from the master's lips is the scriptures. So the light from the master's lips is the scriptures, and from his hands the path setting. So he uses his hands and points in the direction that we need to move, the path. From his eyes, the tearing of veils. So through the grace of his eyes, we actually tear the veils and demolish the last built house. Now, the house is an interesting analogy. I forgot to mention that. It's in this stanza only. So, house building is something that Francis has been using right through the parts, all parts. So, he has talked of a citadel, he's talked of multiple houses, one within the other. He's talked of houses that you build and demolish in the journey of the soul. That's a allegorical reference that he uses, so that he goes back to demolishing and again building. Yeah.
These koshas are Vedic, are the, but these three lines, Nirmanakaya, Sambhodakaya, and Dharmakaya, probably from Buddhistic literature. Maybe Kama will be able to say something about it. So
Kaya
these five
is
koshas,
body, but it sounds very Buddhist. I agree.
Yeah, because these terminologies I have not come across any say literature in Hindu thing I have read. Kama, any comment on that?
No, I think, I'm not very much familiar with Buddhist thing except the Vipassana part. And very simply, I think the sanskaras. Remember, according to legend, Buddha's teaching was very simple, and that is what Vipassana symbolizes. After that, we had all these branches: Atharva Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, the many schools of thought, and it gets confusing. Just like in Hinduism, we have, Vedanta, Dvaita, Upanishads, Puranas. I mean, these are all definitely a way of trying to understanding metaphysical concepts. So let's not confuse ourselves, because remember, Francis didn't have much time to do anything. He was sitting there and he had to write poetry. Sorry, I'm not being, downsizing Francis, but I would also do the same if I was sitting with Baba and I had to do something. I would be, one of my visions is to see the correlationship, like as Baba said, beads on a string, which he has already given in God Speaks, with Vedantism, Christian mysticism, and Islam Sufism, because these are the three main religious operating systems today. And Baba has already shown in God Speaks the correlationship. But I think more for the layman, my vision is if we are able to take Baba's work as a reference point and then correlate it with different schools of thought, I think that would be a great exercise. But
Yes, yes.
let's not confuse ourselves with other references unless it helps us in understanding Baba. Hey, Baba.
Yes.
Good point.
Yes.
I mean, it's the inclusive nature of the poem and the breadth of his research potentially. But here, we are not here to absorb and understand all of that, but more to appreciate and understand it in the context of our understanding of God speaks and discourses and Baba's message, right? So that's a good way of uh, focus, right? So let's go to the next stanza, which I think is again on the building allegory. Build we our houses with bricks of impressions, cement of desire, mixed with tears. Build we our houses so well pleased. Come into my house, wipe your feet first, please, wipe your feet. Sit we and talk, we smile and be gay. No God talk, please, or allusion to way talk. God talk and way talk is crank talk, not tea talk. Gay talk for you, for me talk. With sun reduced sun of Venetian blinds, in this house of me house built by me. So before you get on the path, you're just not interested in anything other than gay talk. I don't want God talk. I don't want way talk. And there's one little confusion he has introduced. So, I mean, confusion or at least some provocative thinking thread. So it's created impressions and desires, right? So desires as distinct from impressions. So there are bricks of impressions, cement of desire, and mixed with tears. That's how you build your house. So think about that. Think about those three elements that make up your house, right? Master builder, the one who built this lousy little house builds also universes, spins suns in burning, hums earths around them, spaces them in spacelessness, times them in timelessness, and orders the time of their ceasing from turning. Master builder, self the creator, self the sustainer, self the destroyer, self the mirror maker of image of himself. Little householder, bright are your tears of happiness and sorrow, portion of self gotten, pitiable your bed and table, and bowed walk, pitiable and glorious. Again, this is he's quickly changing references very smartly. So you have to be quick to keep pace with him, right? So he starts with something and ends with a reference, a frame of reference that's either much, much larger or much, much smaller. So he starts the stanza with God, but then ends with the individual, right? And brings the God element in the last word. So he says, you as individual drop souls are pitiable. Your bed is pitiable, table is pitiable, and your bowed walk, you're bowing down and walking because of the burden of sanskaras that's probably on your back. He says pitiable. But then next word he says and glorious, because you're the same big self as well, the one with the big S. That's the way I see it. Any other things or questions we can take on the stanza? Light of the physical sun, with which is the moon, and curved shape and solid form, frame for art. 1 second. I think there's some note on 78. Oh yeah, so there is notes here on all of it, and I'm sorry, we should have read it before. So Annamaya Kosha, gross body, physical body, Anna, food, Maya is consisting of Kosha, sheath, case, shell, abode. Pranamaya Kosha is subtle body, Prang, vital energies. What is Prang? It's prana, I think. It's more prana. Prana is vital spirit, energy, power. Manasamaya Kosha is mental body, Manasa, mind. Vijnana is discernment, knowledge. Ananda is bliss. Nirmana Kaya is begotten body. Nirman is measure. Nirman is construct, I think. Yeah, creating. Measure or creating. Nirman, measure, creating. Kaya, body, appearance, person. Sambodha Kaya is knowledge, body. Sambodha, knowledge. Dharma Kaya is truth, body. Dharma, order, virtue, essential quality. I think clearly the Nirmanakaya, Sambodhakaya, Dharmakaya is Buddhist, and the earlier words are all Vedantic as we understood, and here are the meanings for those, right? Yeah. With that, we get back to the text. Light of the physical sun, with which is the moon, and curved shape and solid form, frame for art. Light of the divine sun, which lights the forms in infinite appearance of reality. Man is God in man shape, suffering, enjoyment, and suffering, self-separation. Divine sun, weeping veils to cover him from self, and crying to sun for light, to earth for sustenance, to moon for beauty. All giver become beggar before the doors of nothingness. Dreamer absorbed in dreaming, trying to shake himself free from the web of dream, to discern the real, to choose the hard choice of the light road forking at each step. Lot of ideas conveyed here, but it is in the analogy of the sun being the one that is representing the God, right? And the one that gives you the light of reality, light of knowledge. And and he says he uses the moon as a giver of beauty. And from the web of the dream, to discern the real, to choose the hard choice of the light road forking at each step. Beautiful words. What he's saying here is, my understanding is that there is a light road ahead of us. That is the path as given by God, which is sun in this case, and that's why it's a light road. And that light road is forking at every step. That is, we have the choices that we make: action, intelligent action, unintelligent action. So every time you make a choice, you're actually choosing one of the forks in that light road and then making your journey. So that's what I get from this.
Yes, yes.
Anybody?
Light road forking at each step. So every step,
Yeah,
every action, we have to
it's a
think of
choice.
what
I
is
mean,
the choice and then take that proper choice.
or move to choicelessness, which is the
Yes,
desired goal.
intelligent action. Okay.
Yeah. Journeys, dies, and takes birth. Journeys until tired, and rests and considers the outcome of journeying, holds what he has acquired for so long and examines it and discards the trash, dies, takes birth, examines and discards, begins dying in love. Death of rebirth in love life. The house, so carefully built, crumbling bit by bit before the same fire which baked its bricks to dust, under his glorious feet to sing his praise or silently adore, or for his wind to blow any whither or be remolded into useful self shape in his service. Amazing. So he starts from reincarnation and then starts talking about involution. So involution starts here, rebirth in love life. Then he says the house starts crumbling bit by bit. That is, you start realizing the true nature of yourself. Before the same fire which baked its bricks to dust. So the same fire that baked the bricks, which are nothing but impressions, is converting it to dust. The bricks are becoming dust in that same fire. And his glorious feet to sing his praise or silently adore, or for his wind to blow any whither, or to be remolded into useful self shape in his service. So is he hinting at the last line? Is that a hint for those who are going to be uh, useful for Baba's universal work? Angels, archangels, perfect masters, even, right? So are be remolded into useful self shape. So they are also individual selves, but then they are self shaped just to be in his service. So is there a hint there for that?
Yes, I think so. And the self is just his capital. So in the shape of God or
Yeah, in the shape of God.
the
Yeah,
service of God,
correct.
in his service. So this all refers to masters also,
Yeah,
Mazubs onwards.
Wadzubs and above. Takes his stand, at last takes his stand, and rejects the moon road to rebirth in form's delight and pain, of nights of cool breeze over warm sands curling a wisp of fragrant hair across brow dreaming unseen light, and near thunder of Poseidon's horses on blue paddock of ocean, and dawns and disastrous days of ambition realized or thwarted. The moon road to lovely form and fear and hope, and takes the sun road, the death road to immortal self, unborn, undying, abode being, not no houses, only dreamed a dream. Fantastic stanza. Fantastic stanza. I think I'd love to read it again. So I'll just tell you what I think I understand from this. So the moon here analogously refers to all the unintelligent action and all the attractions, the desires, the beauty. If you remember in the earlier stanza, he says beauty light or something with beauty to describe moon. So the sun is the path we need to take. Sun is the right kind of light road that we need to pursue, but moon is a rebirth in delight and pain again and again. So it's just the path that we need to
Yes,
avoid. So
yes.
let's read that.
In the moon is supposed to have 27 wives, and he is the bestower of love of duality, as per the Hindu
Ah,
literature also. So moon is compared to
oh,
all
that's
that
interesting.
attractions, desires, and other things.
Hey, Baba,
Interesting.
but the
So
moon is also a reflection. Its moon exists because of the reflection of the sun, the moonlight.
Yes,
sun,
that is
So the
also there.
sun is like the self,
that's a
we
good
can,
analogy.
as an
Yeah.
analogy, and moon is the ego personality self, like the waxing and waning of the moon. As we know, we have the new moon and the full moon. and all the different phases, like they say, are you moody, because of the moon, right? I'm not directing it at against any gender. It includes both male and female. But they say that the
Yeah, we
moon,
know.
right? The moon affects the moods. So I think that in that sense, we have to look at it as a passing show. Our life is like a passing show. We have to just observe it, become a wow factor, watch, observe, witness, rather than getting attached to it. Hey, Baba.
I like the way you extended the moon to include the fact that it does not have its individual existence. That is, it does not have light of its own. It needs the sun to get the light, and yet it is probably the more appealing of the two from a visual, beauty standpoint, and hence man in the reincarnation years or attempts, he keeps looking at the moon. So it's a very good extension of the analogy, and I think it's a beautiful way Francis has woven the sun and the moon to show what we are going through, right? But I still
And
feel that it's deserving of a reread. Yeah, go ahead, Kama.
And also, I think the other analogy, as Ramana Maharishi used, the analogy of the cinema theater, the white movie screen. So the white movie screen is like the self, and the movie show is like the daily lives of individual beings. So you can imagine that the white screen remains the same, irrespective of whether the movie is on or not, right? It doesn't change. During the pandemic, the movie theaters were closed, but the white movie screen remains the same. The movie theater is open, not 24 by 7, but either way, whether it's open or not open, the movie is projected on the white screen. It doesn't affect the white screen. So the movie is dependent on the white movie screen. Similarly, the moonlight is dependent on the sunlight. And so the movie screen is an independent variable, whereas the movie is a dependent variable. So we can use that analogy between the moonlight and the movie, the changing movie and the changing moon on a daily basis. So that's another form of analogy.
So I think the yeah, absolutely. It's a huge. I mean, we are learning so much as we go that we will have a better appreciation of reading the older parts now, because the sun and the moon come very frequently in Francis's words.
Karthik, it is breaking. We're not able to hear you properly.
Hello, am I audible now?
Karthik,
I think there was a
yes,
brief.
yes.
Yeah, there was a brief problem. There was a brief problem because Teams complained that I'm losing network. So the point I was making is moon and the sun and these analogies and what we understand would make it so much more interesting for us to read Francis again from the beginning. Because if you read it again, you'll see the multiple references to sun and moon and enjoy it in this new understanding and this new extended analogy that we discovered today, right? So I think that's an individual exercise. All of us should attempt to do it in our free times, just a few stanzas every day, just to enjoy this beauty, soak in the love, and just personally enjoy that, right? So anyway, I'll finish this part, this section, by reading the stanza again. Takes his stand, at last takes his stand, and rejects the moon road to rebirth in form's delight and pain, of nights of cool breeze over warm sands, curling a wisp of fragrant hair across brow, dreaming unseen light, and near thunder of Poseidon's horses on blue paddock of ocean, and dawns and disastrous days of ambition realized or thwarted, the moon road to lovely form and fear and hope. and takes the sun road, the death road to immortal self, unborn, undying, abode-less, being, knowledge, bliss, who built no houses, only dreamed a dream. So this is worthy of being marked out. It's a beautiful passage. And Poseidon is the Greek god of the ocean, if we remember correctly. And he uses Poseidon's horses are nothing but waves. So near thunder of Poseidon's waves on a blue paddock of ocean, because he says horses, he says blue paddock of ocean. So again, beautiful, poetic, and yeah, poetic imagery about this. Yeah. Let's continue the next section. Once God slept, untroubled by shadow of dream, unknowledged with knowledge of good and evil, without knowledge even of himself, being infinite knowledge. From sleep he awoke and marched out and unfurled worlds of finiteness, hardness of contrariety, and planted them up through the seven kingdoms as banners of false conquest, and stood and took his stand in himself flood, and turned it back and won back to himself, stripping him of not himself as he went, and arrived glorious in real conquest from where he started and slept, awake, sleep of emptiness, filled with I am God, power, knowledge, bliss, the goal.
Yeah.
So, do you, again, it's amazing. So, we'll read it again for sure. But do you remember what this is? So, we finished this book, I think. Yes, we did. So, basically, we finished the last section, and this one is a coda. Remember the coda? So the coda is the last musical element. After you bring out the whole thing, you have a small piece of music that kind of summarizes. So in poetic forms, it's the last small stanza that summarizes the whole thing. It's like a quick summary of what we went through. So after every all the sections and before the part ends, uh, Francis has used a coda, right? So this is the coda. So this conveys the whole journey, right? Once God slept, untroubled by shadow of dream, unknowledged, because he does not have knowledge, with knowledge of good and evil, and because it's the beyond, without knowledge even of himself, being infinite knowledge. So he does not have knowledge of himself, but himself is infinite knowledge. From sleep, he awoke and marched out and unfurled worlds of finiteness. Beautiful words. Unfurled worlds of finiteness, hardness of contrariety. These worlds were full of hardness of contrariety. Again, we discussed this word the last class. Contrariety is a word used in God Speaks, right? Contrariety is contrasting or the idea of opposites. So he creates
Duality.
worlds which are finite, duality, worlds which are finite, and they are hardened by this contrariety, this oppositeness, and
Hardness
planted up.
also refers to grossness.
Yes, the physical aspect. Yes, correct.
Yes.
Hardness of contrariety. Yeah, you're right. Hardness of contrariety. And planted them up through the seven kingdoms as banners. So then he says that after unfolding these worlds, there are seven kingdoms, and they are nothing but banners of false conquest. They are a conquest, but it's the wrong conquest. It's the wrong victory, right? And stood
One
and
point
took
which
his.
comes. So Darwinian theory is a kingdoms of banners of fall conquest.
That's a good thought. he did well, but it was a false conquest.
Yes.
I mean, he didn't get the bigger picture, right? He's not wrong. He
He's
saw
not
it
wrong.
only
Yes,
with
yes,
the eyes of science.
yes,
But
yes.
Baba came and said, "Hey, wake up! There's more to this." Right. So, of false conquest, and stood and took his stand in himself flood, and turned it back and won back to himself, stripping him of not himself as he went, and arrived glorious in real conquest from where he started, and slept awake, sleep of emptiness, filled with I am God, power, knowledge, bliss, the goal. Full of opposites, but full of the true nature of the journey of the soul, right? So, and if you recollect, visually, I hope you're all visualizing this as we have been reading this in the book, right? So he brings up this theme of the drop soul or God standing in a mighty ocean, and the flood is beating upon him, but he stands tall, and with the power of knowledge is able to become victorious and move towards God realization. So he brings that back. He says, and stood and took his stand in himself flood, a flood that he himself created, and turned it back. What did he turn back? He turned back the flood and won back to himself. So he won back what? To himself, stripping him of not himself. So he stripped the godness, stripped him of the not God aspects as he went, and arrived glorious in real conquest. So the false conquest is over. Now it's the real conquest. And what did he get to? From where he started, and slept awake, sleep of emptiness, filled with I am God, power, knowledge, bliss. And that's the goal. But
You
then
slept awake.
he's
That is very, very cardinal
and
here. And awake is
yeah,
also in capital, he has put it.
correct. And sleep of emptiness, he says. It's actually
Mm.
sleep of fullness, right? So slept awake, the sleep of emptiness, because this time the sleep is with the power, knowledge, and bliss. But he says sleep of emptiness, right?
No, emptiness of all the duality, all the imaginations and all the things.
True. Correct. That's the way to understand this. Perfect.
Yeah.
So here we are, God speaking. That's Baba. And we will start book 4 tomorrow. Any other thoughts? Any other reactions? Feedback?
No,
Good.
it's a
Now I'll
nice
stop.
way of
Yeah, go ahead.
each stanza or each section is a say fast forward reading of all the evolutionary process, reincarnation, involution, and God realization. Huh? That's a nice way he has put it in different ways. He has thought of them and then putting it as poetry here. Nice. Book
Absolutely
3.
nice. I'm sure that this will be remembered for long. This may become a text. This may be studied and so on and so forth. I think we are doing it when nobody knows about it. So very few know about it, but I think this will get its place under the sun. It's not without reason that Baba said it's second to God Speaks, and it's an important book. So
Yeah.
anyway, on that note, we can stop recording, switch on cameras, and meet all the newbies, the oldies, and have some free flow conversation, and also plan the next steps of how we make an impact on the youth. Yeah, and I also have some more feedback from the discussion with Ward, and we can talk a little bit. So hang in there if you have time for a few minutes. I will end the class part by stopping recording. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.